Ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages, welcome to our show. We have guests.
Ooh.
Ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages, welcome to our show. We have gathered together from the cosmic reaches of the multiverse, two of the nerdiest geeks to be found. We proudly present the Professor and her geeky girlness herself, Ace. And now it's time. GeekyKOOL presents Professor and Ace.
Hello, hey AJ, can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Okay. Well, we've gone live because we had to go live. So we are now live. Welcome to GeekyKOOL presents episode 75. We're having some technical difficulties. Thank you guys for those of you that are watching. We appreciate that. Sorry for the delay. We're going to try to make this work. AJ cannot hear me at all, so she's going to keep doing it. You do you. She's going away. She'll be right back, guys. All right. All right. So it's just me at the moment, but Ace will be back with me. Welcome to Professor and Ace. GeekyKOOL presents Professor and Ace, episode 75. It's been a little flustering because we have to go live within a certain time of our projected time, or else we don't get to go live. So we are live because of that. So sorry for the technical problems. We've got some fun movies to talk about. We're going to go back to where one of the things that Ace and I love to do is talk about movies. We both are big movie lovers, her even more so than me. And we love our classical movies. So we're going to do 1965 to 1969, our favorite movies from that time period. They may or may not be wonderful movies, but we like them. So they may be Academy Award winners, and some of them are. And they may be just horrible movies that we just have a fondness for. So we will go through that. We'll tell you why we like these movies and what draws us towards it. And hopefully Ace is back here. Let's see if this is working. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes. Not with my phone.
Hey, and I can hear you. Welcome. I was just giving our spiel about how we love movies and how we're excited to do this on our 75th episode. We've gone back to our well talking about classic movies. So
wow.
Yes. So
I can't believe it's 75.
I know, and I'm glad we were able to get you to come and get technical things worked out enough for
well,
you to be here.
We didn't get anything technical worked out. I'm just borrowing the fiance's phone.
Yeah, I kind of figured that might be what was going on because it kind of looked like you're set up in a different space. So
yeah, it's okay.
I'm glad we were able to figure that out. I had to go live because, because Facebook and YouTube require you to go within a certain time period. If you haven't started by that time period, you're out. So we didn't want to do that. We wanted people to be able to watch us. So we're talking our favorite movies from 65 to 69, the second half of the 60s. We will be ready to hit the 70s, where when I was born, with our next one we do.
This is what's caused all the problem. You see that crack?
That's, yeah.
Yeah. But I have like 2 months before it's paid off, and and it's going to cost the same amount of money to get the screen fixed as it would to pay it off, and I don't have the money. So
right. I understand that.
That's what
You're kind of saving for that whole wedding thing and everything else coming
I haven't even done anything for that. Like let's face it, like we are so far behind on all that. It's not even funny.
It's all good. You know what?
I figure if he's there and I'm there and Tim Church from the Nerd Informants is there to actually officiate the ceremony, then everything else is going to be fine.
Right, exactly. Well, I know I will be there.
Yes, we'll be live streaming it.
We'll be live streaming it, and I'm going to be walking down the aisle. So, yeah, I'm excited for that. So that will be coming at the end of April. Oh, my gosh. I knew what I was trying to say. I couldn't say the right word.
We'll be at OzCon.
At OzCon.
Love OzCon.
Yes. I got my hotel all figured out for OzCon. I'm excited. We're going to be celebrities there. Well, okay,
I'm always a celebrity.
It's true. You are. Everybody loves Ace.
It's a thing. I try to tell people, I'm like, no, like I'm not famous or anything, but at OzCon, they always make me feel like I'm special.
Because they are wonderful. They are wonderful. They treat you so good at OzCon. I love OzCon.
It's like my favorite con.
I know, right? It's not the largest con.
Oh no, it's such a tiny con.
It is very intimate. It's very friendly. Everybody takes care of you. I didn't meet one person where I said, everybody I met was like, oh my gosh, you're so cool. I love this. So yeah. So let's jump in here. We've got some movies that we want to talk about being our favorites. And so I do love going back to these just because I like talking about these movies. And being in the 60s, there's some really kind of cool movies. And there's a lot that people really, I don't think they understand how tough this is when you like movies, because
so hard.
Our list are not even share one this time. There were some of my extra that were there. I'm like, okay, well, I'm glad she picked that one because I didn't get to that one on my list.
So I deliberately, because this is not going to sound terrible, I hope, but the 65 to 69, which is where we're going, is I have several movies that I really like, but none of them are like my favorite movies of all time, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so I picked ones that I thought, Professor will like this, but it's not going to be on his list.
Yeah, you got some of now. Interestingly, some of the ones on my list are some of my favorite ones. So, which is interesting because I really, really like this time period. I was really excited to do this time period because I'm like, I get to say this movie and this movie and this movie.
Right.
And
I was like that with the last list.
Yeah,
the 60 to 60 through 64.
Yeah. And that one had a lot of good ones too, but this one actually has a few more for me to where I'm like, it made the list really difficult because it has so many things out. And you're going to be surprised by what's on my list because it's not very typical. Well, we're not talking noir. We're not talking a lot of sci-fi, but...
well, here's the thing. Noir kind of started going out of fashion.
Oh, yeah, it was.
Around like 1962-ish is when it really started going out of fashion. And by the time 1965 rolled around, it wasn't about the noir anymore.
No.
And it wasn't even scary movies, even like my monster movies that I love, were really out of fashion at that point. And so it was more about musicals and comedies.
Right.
For the big shows were musicals and comedies.
And you're going to be surprised by the number of romantic comedies on my list. So I know, right? And some of them were what?
I was going to say the late 60s, you start going into some sci-fi stuff.
You do. And I've got one on there.
I have one on mine too.
And you do. And one that I wanted to put on my list and I just couldn't quite make it fit. And I will say, there's also something that goes on during the 60s. They start bringing plays into the movies. They've done musicals up to this point pretty regularly, and there's musicals out there on lists. But you start seeing plays adapted, Broadway plays that are not musicals being adapted into movies that are so good.
Yes,
because I've got two of those on my list. So.
It was so hard because I love musicals. You know that I loved, like on the last list, I had like Gypsy and I had like, Mame and like there's so many things that I love about plays that are turned into movies as well. So it's hard. I didn't, I have like 2 musicals, but musicals were so big in that late 60s stage that it's really hard, and you can't discuss movies in that time period without these 2 movies, I don't think. So
I agree. Well, and partially why they were left off my list there because I knew somebody would be taking care of those.
Yeah, we know enough about each other's styles now. I'm like, as I'm looking through things, I'm like, this one might be in Professor's list. This one's probably not going to be, but it should be mentioned. So it's kind of.
Well, and I think, I think not only do we know that, but we appreciate each other's lists also. So that's the other thing. So again, there's no right or wrong answers on this. These are just our favorites, people. And Jason's chimed in here. Thanks, Jason, for chiming in, my friend. One of his favorite movies is from 68. Well, I'm curious to see which one that is.
Yeah,
let us know if we cover it, or let us know if we don't, because we'd want to highlight that.
Yeah. So, shall we jump right in?
Yeah, let's jump on in. Let's get it going here. Yeah.
You want to go first, Professor?
I'm sure I'll go first because I'm excited about my list here.
I know you are.
So let's go. Yeah. So and I had 8 on my short list, but I'm going to move it to 6 because you've got 6, so I'm going to do the same.
I have a little bit. I have a couple more, but I didn't write them down for you. So.
Okay. Well, I've got a couple that I will mention afterwards. Actually, I've got a whole section I'd love to mention afterwards, but there's a couple that I really wanted to put on there, and I just didn't get them made. But we talked about how monster movies were going out at the time.
Yes.
But there's one out there that's a very important monster movie that was pretty big for the time. It actually made on the cheap, on the very, very cheap. And I'm going to, let's see if I can get it pulled up here. Here we go. A little Night of the Living Dead.
Yes. I knew that was going to be on your list. I knew it. And it's on my short list. So, like, if it was going to be an honorable mention, if you didn't mention it, I mean, classic zombie, right?
Yes.
Like, you can't, before this point, that like this was the classic zombie movie.
You're right.
And such a great cinematic take on the zombies.
It is.
It's still what people use for the most part.
Right.
When you think zombies, it's the movement from this movie. It's the way that they walk. It's, those all come from this movie.
That's exactly right.
So you can't love zombie movies without, I mean, you can love zombie movies without seeing this, but if you love zombie movies, you should see this.
I agree completely. This is the godfather of zombie movies. There were movies with zombies in it before this.
Yes.
But this one is the one that really sets the standard. And this movie was made for about $100,000 at the time, and partially because they didn't go grab a bunch of big time actors for this. They used people that were actors in community theater. They used walk-ons. They used all sorts of people to do this movie. And so they were able to film it on the cheap and actually made a pretty good chunk of money on it. But I love how you get the group of people that are noticing what's going on, and they all are fleeing and all end up in this farmhouse together, hoping that this is going to be not sure who they can trust with each other. And it's just an interesting dynamic of all that pressure building up and more and more and more zombies showing up. And so I mean,
1968, like October. So it came out on October 1st, 68. So before Halloween, but it was very much trying to get that, Halloween time for those movies. I think it made like $30 million in the box office, which
let me see. Yeah, because
I want to say, am I close?
It actually made less. It made 12 million domestically and 18 million internationally. But when you compare it to 18 million total fully internationally. So, but you made it for $100,000.
I thought it was like 12 million domestic, 18 million international, which would be 30 million.
Okay.
Isn't that how that works?
Well, I thought international included the U.S. figures. Maybe I'm wrong.
Oh.
I don't know. You may be exactly right.
Let's look this up, Professor. I have another phone now, so I can do that.
There you go. So, but that's my first one. We'll come back and get the answer to that. But I did not want to leave this one off my list. It got moved around a bit. So this one I think was to be more expected from me. But there's some more that when you see my previous list, you'd be like, huh. But I love these movies, so I'm super excited. All right. Well, we've got some. Okay, now that's interesting. We got some spam comments. Okay, why thanks. We'll block that user. Okay, done. So Jason said this while we're doing this. Grew up Pennsylvania, about 2 hours from where they filmed it, and went to places.
That's awesome.
That is awesome. Yes.
Oh my gosh, that's so good. By the way, not bragging, but I am correct. It's $30 million because international is foreign, everything not of North America.
There you go.
And North America is considered domestic. So it made $30 million, which is crazy for the budget that they had,
Right.
and the fact that they had no big name draws. Like there
None at
really
all.
wasn't, this actor's in this, so you must watch it kind of
Right.
thing. But still one of the gold standards for zombie movies. Like I said,
Right.
you watch this, there were zombie movies before, but nothing to the point of this cinematically. And it's done in such a great way. I love how it's filmed.
So George Romero, who wrote, directed, and co-produced it, co-written it, basically his experience was doing television commercials before.
Yeah.
And so he wanted to make a movie, and so he decided just to go make one, and this is what he made. And imagine that. You're like, I think I'll go make a movie today. I'll put out something we're going to be talking about for the next 50 years.
Right.
And it's going to be the gold standard in movies.
Yeah. I mean, you have all the ones that came after it,
right,
and everything, but I don't think we would have had. We wouldn't have had The Walking Dead without this.
Right.
We wouldn't have, that's a big number there. In today's dollars, it would be $242 million for a $100,000 movie, which it would have been more to make it now than $100,000.
Right.
So,
but still, I mean, that's amazing for what they spent. And just a gold standard. Oh, we've got 5 people watching now. Hey, everybody! Thanks for watching us. Welcome to GeekyKOOL Presents.
I'm waving like they can see me. The Night of the Living Dead thing's still on the screen. So.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, maybe if I take that off, then maybe they can see it. Because I'm making hand motions too, which is really funny that we're both doing that. And nobody can. Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching us. Now the numbers start dropping because of that. So I don't know. I'm hoping we didn't get banned on. It's better
when the movie's on there.
Well, I'm hoping we didn't get it banned. Sometimes it's that if you keep the picture up too long, they start banning you. I don't think so. I don't think we're dropped.
Okay.
But okay. All right. So what's on your list? Tell us one of the ones that we're going to talk about with yours.
Okay. So we're going to start with a 1965 movie, musical that was my favorite musical when I was growing up, only because it was on every Christmas time, and that's The Sound of Music.
The Hills Are Alive.
The Hills Are Alive. This was my introduction into history, believe it or not, because it deals with, the invasion of Austria by the Nazis.
Right.
And how that family, one family, who happened to be a really rich family, let's not get it messed up, how they dealt with it. But I didn't know, because I was very young when I first started watching this. I didn't know enough about what happened during that invasion, and during I didn't know what Nazis were.
Right.
The Sound of Music was my kind of like my introduction into this time period in history. But it was done in a way that it's palatable for children. So that's good. But no, I really enjoy The Sound of Music. It's now not one of my favorite musicals of all time, but you can't talk about this time period without mentioning it. Julie Andrews, Christopher Plummer, the Von Trapp family, just in general, that story that they crossed the mountains and stuff. This is a real story. This isn't, they took liberties, of course, but this is a real story. They really were singers. They really did this stuff. And it's just a great movie to kind of introduce children into musicals and also into history. So, plus Julie Andrews, I love her.
How can you just like Julie Andrews, right?
She's the classiest, like you feel like she's never not classy.
Right.
Like there are people who are like Maggie Smith and stuff. Love Maggie Smith. She's one of my favorite people ever to watch on the silver screen. like at all. But like, she's got a mouth on her.
Right.
When she's not like Julie Andrews, I just feel like she is never quite like that. She's just very good most of the time. So, but
even in stuff like Princess Diaries movies and stuff like that,
that's exactly how I picture her in real life.
Right.
Like very prim and proper and a little judgmental, but not kind of like your grandmother judgmental though. Like she loves you, but she's like questioning all the decisions you're making. I feel like Julie Andrews is that. But like the music, the fashion, you can't go wrong with this movie. So I had to put it on the list. One, I just don't think this time period could go without that being on a list. Plus, it was it was the number one movie for 1965.
That's true. Well, and for those of us growing up in the 70s and 80s, that thing was on TV every year, no matter what. And my mom watched it every year, no matter what. So it was just one of those things to where you got that. You absolutely had that. I'm assuming she heard robot voices because I know that's what happened with Spoo's phone. And she's on Spoo's phone. So hopefully she'll be right back and we'll talk more about what's going on. But yeah, she did swipe over. Oh, there she is. I'm assuming it was robot voice. Robots in disguise.
Terrible. I never understood what he was talking about because he's in the other room. And it sounds like you're talking underwater in a robot voice. Yeah, no, it was terrible.
So that's what I figured happened because I'm like, okay, she just went poof there. So for my next one, and again, I said I didn't have a lot of my typical ones, but here, 2 in a row here. So we're going to go with the pinnacle sci-fi movie of the 60s, the one that set the standard for realism in sci-fi.
Okay.
Stanley Kubrick's 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Okay. Such a phenomenal movie.
Yes.
A little cheesy when you go back now with the standards that we have now for just visual effects. However, such breaking, the mold of visual effects for the time.
Right.
And again, talk about gold standard of zombie movies. Without this, in these kind of movies, you're not going to have some of the space movies that we have.
Right. That's
now.
Exactly right.
So, but no, such a great pick, Professor.
Well,
though.
Yeah, well, and very unique in how it's told. It's not a typical action sci-fi movie. Very much a very hardcore science sci-fi movie. Even though you've got this giant monolith and everything else, I mean, you've got some pretty out there ideas with it. Jason says that it's one of his favorite movies, and both the movie and the book. And I agree, Jason. I actually read the book before I watched the movie. Yeah. So, yeah.
I love doing that.
Yeah.
I used to make my kids do that.
Well, and this one, interestingly, the screenplay for 2001 was written first, and then the book was adapted afterwards. Arthur C. Clarke co-wrote the screenplay with Stanley Kubrick, and then they based it off of one of his short stories from the 50s. And so he took it and actually wrote out the novelization of the movie afterwards, which isn't the way that normally works, but I had to, I was picking things to read in high school that were classic sci-fi stuff, and that was one of the ones that was on the list, and so I went there. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it, 2010, 2061, so I really enjoyed that whole series. Arthur C. Clarke's a really good writer, so. But yeah, that is that one. But yeah, that one is a classic that again, it's hard to leave that one off because of what it does. It's visually so stunning. The interaction of what an AI could be and how the AI could go rogue on you.
Right.
I'm sorry. I can't do that. Yeah.
it's one of those things that I feel like if you're really into sci-fi, if you haven't seen it, you really should.
Most definitely.
There are just certain movies. It's kind of like horror. There are certain movies in those two genres in particular that you should see, that should always be on those lists of like, oh, I'm a horror fan, watch this.
Right.
Oh,
right.
I'm a sci-fi fan, watch this. And these are the last two you picked are two of those movies.
Well, I'm trying to do good there. So, Jason said revenues today's would be 1.147 billion. Dang, that did well. Yeah,
huge. That's
very huge.
I mean, but it got a lot of people, especially teenage boys. I know it sounds bad, but it's very much sci-fi was very much a boys' club.
Right.
And it was written and directed and everything. Almost all sci-fi is geared toward the young men. But it got a lot of them into sci-fi.
Right.
And this is pre-Star Wars, so it's that like, oh, now we're getting into something, and then a few years later you have all these other ones come up and everything. So no, it's a great pick.
Well, and it's interesting because unlike most sci-fi at that time, even afterwards, which is very focused on action adventure, like your Flash Gordon and
it's science heavy.
Buck Rogers, it's very science heavy on how you move through space and how you do things. It's very interesting because you can, and I think that probably got a lot of people interested in science along with science fiction there.
Yeah.
Because of how focused it was on that. So, all right. So what do we got next for you, AJ?
Let's see. Let's talk about some of the comedy. Like I've said before, the late 60s had so many comedies to choose from. And I chose a couple of my list that are they're fun. I like fun movies. They're not like the best movies and not the most critically acclaimed movies, but they're a fun watch. One of them has been remade, and that's the one I'm going to talk about now is Yours, Mine, and Ours.
Yep.
Oh my God.
Recently remade, but yes.
I mean, it's been remade a couple times, but this one is the best version of it. It is so time period, like it fits into that time period.
Right.
The story is very much a story that you could see happening in that time period.
Right.
Two widows have, she has a bunch of kids, he has a bunch of kids, and they fall in love and they're like, but we can't be together. Like, look at this kid. Like, look at that. Like, look at that group of kids right there. And, but they do, and they make it work. But she is the housewife, like so much. And he is in the Navy, Lucille Ball, Henry Fonda, such a good cast. And it's fun comedy for families.
Right.
So I actually own that movie and I was watching it the other day, actually. So
that is a really good pick. I've seen the most recent reversion of that, and which was decent, but you're right. This is the classic one. It's just like what I tell my wife, who tries to argue with me that the oh my gosh, the one with the twins, Parent Trap, the new version. She tries to tell me the new version's better. I'm like, no, the new version's fine. It's fun, but the classic version is the better one.
Here's the problem with the new version. Is it wouldn't have happened like that. Classic version, potentially.
Right.
Because now a judge would not have split up twins.
Right.
Like, a judge would not let parents go, I'll take one, you take one. We never see each other again. That's not going to happen.
Right.
But back in the 60s, it could have happened.
It could have happened.
But no, I just think that sometimes Hollywood should leave well enough alone.
Well, you don't need to remake everything. Remake bad
No.
movies.
Yes, but if it's a
Don't-
good movie, don't remake it.
There's no point. There's no reason. Right.
There's totally no need to remake a good movie. And
Right.
this is a good movie. Parent Trap is a good movie.
Yes. Yes.
Parent Trap 2, not so much. Parent Trap 3,
Yeah, I'm with you.
When you see Haley Mills and she's now older, and it's just weird, and it's like Mrs. Bliss time, which is Saved by the Bell before Saved by the Bell was Saved by the Bell.
Right. Right.
But yeah, no. This though is Lucille Ball.
Oh, I love Lucille Ball.
Right? But this gives you a different view of her.
Right.
This is a very maternal Lucille Ball.
Right. Very different than I Love Lucy and many of the other movies that she had done. Yeah.
Yeah. I think this is such a good fit for her in the time period where it happened. Like, in her career as well. So no, I just think it's a fun movie. If you guys haven't seen it, it's a really fun movie for families to watch, especially if you have like 2 or 3 kids and they're like complaining because they're like, well, I don't get my own stuff out, and watch this movie with them and they will be grateful for the things that they have.
If you can get them to focus on it long enough.
Underwater thing.
Oh no.
I'll be back.
Okay. All right, I'm going to throw up this comment here for me, Jason. I agree completely. That's a movie they should never, ever, ever think about remaking, because The Princess Bride is, to me, one of the most perfect movies ever. So remaking it would be horrible. So I'm with you, Jason.
Here's the thing with The Princess Bride. You can't remake The Princess Bride. No one will ever be Andre the Giant.
Right.
No one.
No one.
And if they should have hit when the iron was hot, because in the actual story of Princess Bride comes from a history book. It really actually comes from a true history book that they took a lot of liberties with. But in the history book followed Buttercup and Wesley after they left. And they had a baby. And Fezzik was the godfather and protected the baby. Like these things happen in that history book. They should have made a sequel to it back in the day. They should not remake it. I just can't picture anybody. I can't picture anybody doing it nearly as well as the cast that they had.
Nope, not at all. It'd be inconceivable.
Right there. See, no one could do that.
Right, exactly. Right on, Mandy. We agree with you. So
Princess Bride is a classic.
It is.
It was almost the theme for my wedding.
See, that would have been a really cool theme.
I know, but then it was like, it's so fancy.
Yeah, no. Yeah. I would have paid money to see Tim up there going, marriage.
But seriously, Tim was like, we talked about this, and he was like, oh, I would so do that.
I would love that. I would pay to see that. Marriage is what brings us together today. And having that big hat, it would have just been perfect. That would have been so awesome. So
we'll have to figure something out.
Yeah, I mean, he'll be great, and everything will be awesome for you guys' wedding. But that would have been a lot of fun.
It would have been a lot of fun.
So I want to go with one.
Okay.
That's a change of pace. It's probably still considered more of a guys movie because it mainly has guys in it, but it is not my typical kind of movie. But this movie is so good. I love this movie so much. And that would be Cool Hand Luke.
Oh my God, it's such a guy's movie.
It is, right? But
it's such a guy's movie.
And I love the scene where they're out there working, and every time they got to do anything, they have to tell the guards what they're doing. Putting on my hat, boss. Taking my hat off, boss.
Right.
Getting a drink, boss. I mean, I really, really like that. This movie is chock full of amazing actors.
Oh, yeah.
You've got Paul Newman, George Kennedy, who won an Oscar for his role in this as Best Supporting Actor, Dennis Hopper, J.D. Cannon, and the list just goes on and on and on.
It has a lot of them like near the beginnings of their fame.
Right.
Not not all of them, but Dennis Hopper, totally
very
towards the
much
beginning
so.
of his fame.
Yes.
Not his first movie, but it was one of those that he was still doing ensemble pieces at this point. Like he was not the leading man and stuff. No, it was one of my dad's favorite movies. And that's probably why it would never make my list.
Sure, I can see that.
Because my dad has this habit of watching his favorite movies over and over.
It's kind of a guy thing. We have a tendency to do that, I think. So, but yes, I agree. It's not a movie I would watch all the time, but I really love this movie.
Here's the thing: the story is great.
Yeah.
The cinematography really good. The casting amazing for what they needed. Everyone was cast so well. But yes, no, it's very much a guy's movie.
Yeah.
That's okay. You're a guy, Professor. You're allowed to have guys movies.
Well, and Jason's going to say my line before I got to it, and it was coming, but he beat me to it. What we have here is failure to communicate. And the really funny thing is I've used this with people, even guys that are much younger than me, and they have no idea what I'm talking about.
Right.
But I'm like,
sad.
You need to go watch this and understand this line because this is true about life right here.
Right. Isn't it sad though? Like this is why I love doing these episodes, is because hopefully somebody will watch this and be like, I've never heard of that movie, or oh my gosh, maybe I should watch this movie. If you like guys movies, if you know, and when I say that, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
The men who are watching know what I'm talking about. And you haven't seen this movie, you should watch it.
You should.
And it's not so much a guy's movie that women are going to be like, I
mean, there's some attractive guys with their shirts off in this movie, so
there are.
So
it's always that.
There is that, right?
It's the reason that some guys will watch chick flicks with girls. It's because they're like, pretty girls. Okay, I'm in.
Yeah, you give me any Drew Barrymore movie, I'm in. I don't care what we're doing, I'm in. I have a thing for Drew, and yeah, I'm like, okay, chick flick with Drew. Okay, I'm all right with that.
Right.
So Jason said, oh. Yes, Trevor Martin, who is the warden of this. Basically, for the people who don't know, this is a prison movie of sorts. They are on a chain gang in Florida, and the main character, Paul Newman's character, is put in this prison really for a minor offense, and then he just continues to get stuck there. You're cutting off the heads of parking meters. It was stupid, childish thing he did, but it doesn't mean you go to a chain gang. Oh my god. But the evilness that oozed out of his character when he's sitting there, and the whole movie, how he's that manipulative basically guy in charge, and he's the one that uses that line that's perfect. So yes.
Yeah, no. He's very much what you would think of as a narcissistic, power hungry, warden. Like, think the warden from Shawshank, but with a little bit more just pure hatefulness.
Right.
Like, well, not as mentally messing with, like, he just let's mess with
the whole egg thing.
Yeah.
So mentioning Shawshank, comparing, Jason also said it's the 67 Shawshank Redemption, basically. Yeah, I agree, Jason. It's a fantastic movie. It is a guy's movie, but it's one of those that I had to include on my list because I can't think of that time period without that movie, and it's one I always enjoy. It wouldn't be one I'd watch weekly. I've had those movies, Star Wars. I've done the whole weekly thing in the past, but I must be going robot again. Am I going robot? Okay, all right. So yeah, it unfortunately, Spoo's phone is having issues with that. I don't know what's going on with that. And then AJ's phone was not allowing her to hear anything today. So, they're just having a technical problem. Still a robot. I'm going to have to get them set up with some sort of account to be able to where they don't have to use their phones, because it seems to be a problem. But we'll be working on that to be able to get stuff going better going forward. So, all right. You back? You're back.
Yes,
All
I can
right.
hear you.
All
Okay,
right. Well, that's good.
that's
Not
the
as a
most
robot.
annoying thing ever.
Yeah, it is pretty annoying.
We need
We're
fun.
gonna have to work on getting you guys set up with something on your computer or something to do this, so you don't have to do robot.
I'd have to have a camera on my computer. I don't have a camera on my computer.
That can be arranged. So we can fix that. All right. So give me your next one here on your
Let's
list.
see here. We're going to go. I'm going to save the 1968 sci-fi one for last.
Yep. Okay. All right.
We're gonna go 67. Fantasy comedy with Rex Harrison, Dr. Dolittle.
The classic Dr. Dolittle.
Classic Dr. Dolittle.
Yeah.
Like the
Great
one
movie.
where the animals don't actually talk.
Right.
I don't care to hear what the animals are talking. I liked that he talked to them without having that actual interaction. So it was all the actors, the animal actors were great.
Right.
Because they would have these like moments where their head was turned and you could totally tell that they were annoyed by him. And he played off of the reactions of these animals.
Right.
In a way that was really fun. But this is like such a good kids movie. It's such true to the books.
Right.
Not the story exactly, but the character development. So great. Has nothing to do with a vet or Eddie Murphy type of Dr. Dolittle.
Right.
It is set in England. Rex Harrison from My Fair Lady. I love him so much.
He's great.
He plays a doctor who could talk to animals, but nobody else hears them.
Right.
And he goes on an adventure. He actually goes on 2 adventures, but it's all in the same movie. To find, some very unique animals. They travel inside the shell of a giant snail. Like, how fun is that? It's so much fun.
It is.
When I was growing up, I loved this movie. I would watch it all the time. We had it on VHS, and I wore the VHS tape out like twice. Because I like those humorous movies, and there was all kinds of cute animals. There were kids. There was, talking animals, but they didn't actually talk.
Right.
So
you had to imagine what they might be saying. Yeah.
You use your imagination for their voices and everything. But it's such a good one. And again, they've remade it. They remade it with Eddie Murphy. They remade it with RDJ, which they shouldn't have done at all. Stop giving me CGI animals.
Right. Bring me the real animals. Right.
We have animals.
Yes. Train animals that can do all this stuff. Right.
Right. They've done it for years. Now it's like CGI and weirdness. And it's kind of like the Jack London that they did with Harrison Ford and wifing. And I'm like, why is this giant dog? Why is this not a real animal?
Right. Exactly.
It bothers me a lot. I
can understand. Well, if we're trying to do something that we can't do, like we can't get in film either a creature that doesn't exist or one that's not accessible because it's under the ocean, whatever. That's one thing.
Right.
But to do it with animals that we've got access to, that the local zoos have access to, that you can bring in animal trainers. I mean, that was a common thing. Why have we given that up for CGI? I don't know. Right.
And to the extent that it is. It's just like...
Right. Well, and Mandy says it's because of PETA, and maybe it is.
I know.
And all I can say is, PETA, I like your animals a lot better if I see them on the screen. I don't want to eat them as much, so maybe you should, put them on the screen. I don't know.
Well, and here's the thing with it. Then film the animals and use that that there's ways to manipulate film.
There is.
Without having to go full CGI.
Right.
I just don't want, I don't feel like the actors play off the animals as much.
Right. No, exactly.
Like,
and they do a lot of cute things.
Rex Harrison had a chimpanzee on him. Like, he was
Right.
holding a chimp.
He was.
He could, react to the chimp.
Right.
If they're holding, a bag of potatoes, pretending it's a chimp, and it's going to CGI it, they don't have anything to work off of.
You don't have anything to work off of. I agree. Jason says, people eating tasty animals. Yeah. So, but no, all these Disney movies back in the 60s and 70s had animals. I mean, you have a Gus the kicking mule, the football kicking mule. You had one about a cat from space. I mean, you had all these things.
Oh my God.
If you can use a cat for a movie, cats won't do what you want them ever, then.
Well, look at the Grizzly Adam kind of movie.
Yes.
With the bears.
Right.
That's a thing. Swiss Family Robinson.
With exactly.
The zebra and the tiger. And
right.
They hurt, these animals were fine. We're I'm just saying. Just saying. I know it's going to be nope.
Mandy, you're cracking me up.
Oh.
Yeah, and real vampires, not just sparkly ones.
I mean, yeah, if you're going to go there. Well, we don't have dire wolves. Dire wolves aren't a thing anymore. So, and then werewolves are supposed to be dire wolves. That's one of those things. It's okay, I get it. But use a real dog and then just
there's some big freaking wolves that you could film in
and then make them look bigger.
Yeah. Beef them up. Oh.
Here, if you can take a really short actor and put him with a really tall actress and she looks shorter than him, you could do that with a dog.
Well, the actor that was the tallest in the Lord of the Rings movies was actually the one who played Gimli, who was the shortest.
I know.
So, if you could do that, you can definitely make
if you can make somebody looks like a human and somebody look like a hobbit.
Right.
You can make a dog look bigger.
Exactly. That's all we're saying. That's what we want, people.
We're picking on these movies. It's terrible.
But we're not picking on the ones we're talking about. We're picking on the ones that came after. Stop using stupid effects. I love special effects when they're used right, but don't overuse them. There's no point.
Yeah.
So I'm going to talk about a movie with no special effects. Set from a Broadway play, one of my favorites, and a romantic comedy. So I'm kind of really going off the ledge with my history here, but I do love this movie, partially because I did act in a scene from this movie in college. So I'm going to take us to Barefoot in the Park.
Such a good movie.
I know. I love this movie. I can't help but love it. The interaction in this movie between Robert Redford and Jane Fonda is amazing.
Yeah.
You just love their characters. I love the difference in how uptight he is and how she's kind of flighty, and I just love that interaction.
She's very much what you think a 1960s girl would be like.
Right.
Very stereotypical. But the banter between them, the banter that they have, which is weird because it's not witty banter.
No,
it's just
you're right.
Banter.
It is.
It's I don't know. You just feel this is some of the things that they say to each other are things that people say.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, and sometimes really being almost hateful with each other.
Yeah.
But yet still loving each other. And especially at the end where you kind of come back together. And Jason says I need to give up my man card now. Okay. I'm a theater geek, so I'm going to claim that.
No.
So, and I think Jason's kidding, but
I'm telling you, here's the thing. If Robert Redford played in it, you don't have to give up your man card.
That's true. Right. Yeah, exactly. and there was a Jane Fonda movie I could have gone with that would have been a lot more sci-fi, well known from this time period. And I did not go there. I went with the romantic comedy based off of a play movie that
Well,
I
here's the
really
thing.
do love. I love this movie.
I love movies based off of plays because I
Yes.
find that plays are written in a way that's to engage the audience from start
Yes.
to finish.
Yes, that's true.
Movies are written with lulls in the middle.
Right. Right.
Like there's beginning, engaging, engaging in the middle, engaging at the end. Plays, you have to have something entertaining people either visually or spoken at all times during the play if it's a good play.
Right.
So I find that the conversations, the wit, the language, the movements are very much more precise in what they do, and it's more of an engaging thing.
Right.
So I love that.
Well, and also the plays was from Neil Simon, who's my
Right.
favorite playwright. So I love Neil Simon. So I'm not even going to pretend I don't. I just find his plays amazing. So I knew this one was coming up. I was actually real excited to talk about this because I'm like, AJ's not going to believe I'm going to pick this one.
I
She's going to
do
be
not like this
so
is not something I ever
told
thought.
you I was going to step out of my what you thought was my comfort zone and give you some that you're going to be like, really? Yep,
This
that's where
one
we're going.
is surprising, but it's a good pick.
It is
It's a
great
really good
movie.
pick.
Yeah.
And I see it with you because I mean I know your favorite movie is not something most people would suspect either. So I can kind of see it, but no, it's such a good movie and you picked it for the right reasons. You picked it because it is well written.
Yes, it is well written.
Very well directed.
Yes.
The cast was so good,
Yep.
but the directing of the cast is brilliant.
Yes,
and that's the thing. We've talked about this. I love movies and I will pick movies that are like, but there's things that I enjoy watching. But then there are movies that I enjoy watching not because I love the story, but because I love how it looks on the screen.
Yes, yes.
This one is written well, plus it looks good on the screen.
It is.
So
it's so well acted.
Yeah.
You really kind of buy them as a couple. Sometimes you have couples in movies, you're like, I don't buy that at all. But this one, completely from the beginning. And you can see the frustration of them trying to figure out how to make this work. I mean, so it just, I bought in. So, and knowing the play is very much that way too. But you have to have good actors to be able to pull it off. My acting scene, I was not that good of an actor. I just, I was just I was a theater minor. So, we just kind of flushed that off. But I really enjoyed acting in it because it was such an amazing play to act in. So, there's those reasons also why I picked it. But yeah, that's on my list. All right. So what do we got next for you?
Let's see here. We will go with the other musical and Barbra Streisand. And it's Hello, Dolly.
Hello, Dolly.
Okay, first of all, stunning.
Yeah. Yes.
And you know how I am. I love visual effects but not like science visual effects, not like technological visual effects. I like this scene right here. Look at the colors. Look that she's in red and she stands out compared to everybody else.
Right.
But they're all impeccably dressed and styled. Right. And it is just such a beautiful movie to watch.
Costuming is important.
Yes. And not just that, like the props, the Milner shop, like the hat shop.
Mm-hmm.
That's very much what one of those would have looked like, but it's so pretty and it's so feminine. And but that's what it would have been because men didn't go into those shops.
Right.
They were like for the women. It's just, and it's such a fun show. Now I've seen it on stage.
Right.
And it's beautiful usually on stage too. Costumes are always great, but there was something about visually seeing it on a movie screen, on a TV screen, that you get to see the frames so much more. Like when it's on on stage. This is one of those that translated to movies so well.
It did.
Because you could go bigger with it.
Right.
Because it's a big movie. It's a big story.
It is.
It's meant to have all these things going on. When they're at the restaurant and Dolly's walking down the stairs, you're supposed to be seeing all these other things going on. And it's so much fun. It's so much fun. And I just love the costumes. Like,
I knew this one was going to be on your list also, and because of that very reason, because I'm like, oh yeah, this one has the visual costumes, it's stunning, it's a musical. This one is a perfect fit for AJ. She's going to pick this one, so
yeah,
I knew that for that and Sound of Music, I knew both were going to be on there with no question. So, like, yep, these two are making it here, and I'm glad you picked it. It would not make my list of favorites, but I like this movie. I'm not turning it off. Again, I'll probably have to lose my man card for saying this, but I will sit and watch that any day long. You're like, oh, look what's on. We're going to watch this. All right.
Yeah. It's one of those things. We've talked about that. A lot of the times I pick these movies like before, you had streaming sites. And if you were flipping through the channels at night and you saw something, I picked these movies that I'm like, if it came on, I would just be like, oh, I'm going to watch it.
I still do that. Even sometimes, I'll be flipping stations like, oh, they've got this on. I'm going to sit and watch this. Even now, even though I've got all the streaming that I can do and more things to watch on my streaming sites than I can ever get done.
Right.
There are movies and things that'll be like, ooh, yeah, let's check this out. So so that is on my list.
And here's the thing: I'm not a huge Barbra Streisand fan.
Right.
I'm just not. Like, her voice is okay.
Right.
But she was perfect for Dolly.
She was.
And,
I agree.
And that's the thing. It's like, she was just perfect for Dolly. And this movie's just fun. It's a fun movie.
I agree. I cannot argue with that pick. That's a perfect pick. So for you. So, all right. Well, I'm going to go with my next one. Nope. Yeah. Okay. We're going to.
Yep. I've got to go.
All right, robot voice got to her again. So, all right. Well, thank you guys for watching. We're so glad that you're watching with us, and hope you're enjoying this because we're having a great time with this. AJ and I do love doing these movies, so thank you guys for joining us. So, all right. So I'm gonna go with another Neil Simon play.
Okay.
This one probably makes a little more sense. It's more of a guy play, but this thing is so funny. And again, I was in an acting scene for this also with my best friend, and we were college roommates, and this just fit us so perfectly. Talk about The Odd Couple.
You can't. I mean, very much a guy movie.
Yep.
But Felix and Oscar, like what?
Oscar.
It's so true.
Yeah.
For some reason, the messiest people are always friends with the neatest people.
This is true. This is true.
Like, what? I mean, couples are that way too. There's always the one who's a little bit neater than the other one.
Right. And of course, this is the extreme on it, but
and
it really speaks to the time period in the 60s where divorce started becoming a much bigger thing.
Yeah.
People were getting divorced. People didn't, like Felix didn't really know how to deal with being divorced. He didn't know what to do with himself. Moves in with Oscar, who's a complete slob. Oscar was divorced, but he's like, all right, well, that's fine. And but you see this friendship here develop even further than already was. But it really speaks to the time, what's going on there. And the scene there with the two ladies from England, where they're trying to be couples with them, and doing the double date at the girls' room. That's so funny. And then you see Felix just floating, like, oh my God. I just find this so fun.
It's a good pick.
My favorite scene is the scene where Felix is just fed up with Oscar and he starts yelling at him and he grabs the ladle and starts waving it at him, and Oscar's like, Stop waving a spoon at me. It's not a spoon. It's a ladle. How can you not know that? I just love that.
And let's talk about the cast.
Oh my gosh.
There's a reason that these two men have been in so much stuff together.
Exactly.
Comic wise, they feed off of each other in such a good way.
Yep. Yeah, Jack Lemmon, Walter Matthau, two guys that, I mean, if you're going to put two guys together to do a guy movie or whatever, these are hits. So
well, and here's the thing: you wouldn't like if before this happened in your mind, you wouldn't put those two together. And the things they did before this,
right?
Like you wouldn't be like, no, they're like, it's like the first buddy, you know, like not the first, but it's one of the first buddy movies that are like specifically about like a bromance, kind of what we would call bromance now. But I mean, it is. It wasn't called that then because you know, homophobic, but now it would be like, oh yeah, that's the bromance. They like live together and they deal with each other, and it's very much a relationship.
Yes.
In a weird dynamic way, but they work so well off of each other.
They do.
You can kind of see that when they're talking, it's that banter. Like I said, like I love banter when it comes to movies. And if you guys don't understand what I'm saying with banter, it's that the way that they talk to each other and bounce off, and it's so natural. You believe it. You're like, no, this is how they're talking to each other.
And it's not just their words, it's their looks.
Yes.
It's their pauses. It's how their body language, all of it just plays in. And these two guys are great at that.
They're so
Grumpy
good.
Old Men is a great movie and a sequel movie in the 90s, I believe. They were great, but you just bring the Odd Couple and you make it modern. And what happens
That's what it was.
Old guys. And it was amazing because of that. Jason says this. Get it to pull up here, Jason. So, Jason, I understand I was Oscar also. So, but that's funny that they just looked at you and gave you the part. That's awesome. But Oscar's my favorite character just because he's like, yeah, whatever. Well, okay. Stop being such a hassle. Go on. So there's that. Mandy said, I think I watched The Sound of. Let's see. Was that music? I think it may be music there. Here we go. I think I watched The Sound of Music like 25 times one summer at my aunt's.
Right? Yeah, it's one of those movies.
It is.
It's
now,
like,
for me, I got tired of it after a while. I still will watch it, but I had to take some time away from it because it just.
I can't watch it as much as I did when I was younger. But when I was younger, there's something about when you're young that you can watch the same movie over and over.
Right.
It's the whole Frozen thing, you know, as a grandma. Like now it's like my granddaughters just watch Frozen. Like when it came out, it was like, let's watch Frozen. Let's watch Frozen. Let's watch. No, let's not. Let's not. Let's watch Encanto the other week when we had her here 7 times in one week.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm like, okay. But I can't say anything because I used to do that with certain movies.
Right.
So, yeah.
All right. Well, we're down to 2 for you and 1 more for me.
Okay.
So give us your next one here.
Okay. So I love Doris Day.
Mm-hmm.
You know I love Doris Day.
I do.
Anyone who's watched these shows that we've done knows I love Doris Day. And I like Brian Keith as well.
Yep. Yes.
And they did a movie together called With 6 You Get Egg Rolls. That's
such a name too.
It is. It's so funny. And it's very much yours, mine, and ours kind of, but in a smaller scale. There's like 6 of them instead of but again, they get married, they fall in love, they get married, and the family has to learn to deal with each other.
Right.
And it's not easy, but you know how you were talking about Felix and them because of the divorce. This is very much they're divorced. They're single parents. This is a time in America where that was something that was just really, unless you were a widow, it was not something that happened. And even if you were a widow, you didn't stay a widow long because you had to have a co-parent.
Right.
And these movies really started coming out where there were single parents and then blended families. And that's a big deal.
Right.
So, but no, I love Doris Day.
She's awesome.
I do. She's just amazing. But this is a fun movie. Again, another good family movie.
I agree completely. So AJ, Andy's got a question for you.
Neither one of us are really messy, but I'm messier.
Right.
Shpoo he has very particular ways he likes things done.
That I can see.
We won't say OCD.
Right.
It's a thing. He has learned to let go a little bit.
Right.
From being with me, and I have learned to be a little bit neater and do things so it doesn't drive him crazy.
Right. I get that.
Like, we team up and do a lot of things together because of that. Like when we do laundry, he'll usually start the laundry. I put the laundry in the dryer a lot of the times, and then we both fold the laundry together.
Well, there you go.
But there are certain things I won't fold. I won't fold his socks because he's very particular. I don't know if you guys know this about Shpoo. You don't get to see his socks. But he wears a black sock and a white sock. Like black sock and a white sock. That's like all like mixed match every day. But when he folds them, he has to put them. If he has like a rotation in his drawer, and so the black goes on the outside for like it's a thing, and I don't even touch it. So he is very much the neat one.
Right. He's very much more Felix.
Yes. I am nowhere near Oscar.
No, right. Well, it's hard to get near Oscar, right?
But
my daughter's near Oscar right now.
Right. But like I don't have a problem if I'm like changing clothes, leaving the clothes on the floor for a couple minutes. Like I'm not gonna
Right.
That drives him crazy.
You ever do it just drive him a little crazy? No comment. All right. Well, here's the interesting thing about me. Maybe you didn't ask about me, and I feel hurt, maybe. No, I don't. I really don't. But the assumption, I'm sure, is that I'm the messy one. And I get that. And when we started our relationship, my wife and I was the messy one. And she was the more neat freak and everything else. We've evolved to where I actually do more of the cleaning. And I don't get anxious about it other than if my kids aren't doing what I've asked them to clean things.
Oh, that's a parent thing.
That's a parent thing. But I don't get upset with her for being messy. I'm much more, especially if I know somebody's going to come over, I really go into like super cleaning and everything needs to be in a place. If I do what I once heard was called, what was it? Basically, it's when you're having company, you do all this cleaning. And I'm like, that is so me because I don't want people to see a messy house. Right. And I don't usually keep it too messy. And, we do clean the bathrooms and clean the floors and do all that on a regular basis. But it's just one of those things where I'm like, okay, people are going to see my place and judge me. And I think that's because I grew up with kind of the other extreme. And so I kind of want to present well. So it's funny because my wife has come to a place, she's like, I don't care. I don't care if they see my house messy. Like, oh, I do. I'm going to have to clean. So, and I'm like,
I will pick up, but like when I say Shpoo is my DVDs, I used to have just in an order that made sense to me.
Right.
They are no longer in that order.
Right.
They are now alphabetized.
Yeah.
Because that's a thing that has to happen. His in his studio, he has all his figures in his studio. When he takes them down to clean them and reorganize, it takes days.
Right.
Like a week. Because even when he moves them, they have to be a certain way. He's always like, you can help me do this. No, I can't.
Nope.
No,
You're gonna tell me I'm wrong. Yep, I'm done.
He doesn't say I'm wrong, but then like I'll notice that he like changes it as soon as I like turn my back. So I'm not gonna help you, dude. It's
Right,
just
right.
do
Just
yourself.
do it yourself. Rather than me stressing you out, just do it yourself.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah, I'm with you.
and he will tell you, and he tells everyone this. Anyone who he's ever lived with, he'll tell you if he's in the mood to clean, don't try to help. He doesn't want you to help because he's just doing it, and he has a very particular way he does it. He was a really good house husband before he got his new job. He was like
very
he was
true.
a good house husband. So
all right. Well, let's move on past that. Let's go to my last one on my list here.
yes.
My number one movie of this time frame. And again, not my typical movie. This one's definitely it's a drama.
Ooh.
It has a little bit of comedy, but not much. Very much a time period about the issue of race. And guess who's coming to dinner?
Okay, I knew this was going to be on your list because you've mentioned it before.
Oh, okay. All right. Because I love Sidney Poitier. I think he's amazing.
Yeah.
I had another one I wanted on this list, and I couldn't figure out a way to get it there. So, but I love this movie. This movie is one I will sit and watch every time. The interaction of the family is just amazing to me. Look at this cast. This cast is incredible, right? My gosh. Spencer Tracy, Sidney Poitier, Katharine Hepburn, Catherine Houghton, and that's just to name a few. Cecil Kellaway as Monsieur Ryan is probably my favorite character in the whole movie. He cracks me up, and I just love his, like, yeah, why are you being so pretentious? What are you doing? I love that. So this movie is my favorite one from this time period. I will watch it every time it's on, no matter what. I think Sidney Poitier is just a genius and an amazing actor anyway, and this to me is his pinnacle movie. He had other movies that were incredible and that talked to issues, but this one's the one that really speaks to me so well.
Well, and they've remade it. They remade it.
And why?
No.
Why?
Why? However, I will say, it's such a topic that is still, it's not as forbidden in our society as it was. But when this movie came out, it was still very, very taboo.
Right.
And this, I love movies that don't shy away from going straight to the important issues.
Right.
Like if you're going to make a drama about society and the issues, then don't shy away from it and just hit it straight on. And this one does that.
Right. And it shows you both sides too. I mean, it shows you, and interestingly, because it shows you what his parents are thinking and how they're struggling with him going to marry a white girl.
Right.
And and her parents, who have always have kind of led the whole idea of social progress and equality. But now when they're faced with their daughter's going to marry somebody who's African American, how they have to struggle with that, which I found fascinating that they actually take both sides, not making either one of them wrong, but talking about how the struggle is real just to try to figure it out. And even though you may know up here this is a okay thing, how is this, and you're worried about how this is going to affect the lives of my children, my grandchildren in the future. It's just an amazing movie to talk about the issue.
Here's the thing with it, and this is what, and I tell people this all the time, and this is when you have something happen in your family, when it comes to your children, and they make a choice that you don't have any problem with, but society might have problems with.
Right.
You become fearful for your child's safety.
That's true.
If they, especially like back then, this is the 60s. We're talking 67.
Yep.
This is still the civil rights kind of blacks were still being like killed and churches bombed, and like all of the stuff was still very relevant.
Right.
And so for a movie to come out where it's a black man marrying a white girl, in love with a white girl, that shows concern on both family sides, because the black family is very concerned for his safety.
Right.
The white family is very concerned for her safety.
Right.
They're concerned, like, if you get married, it's not that neither one of them were racist,
right,
in a way that they would be like against someone from a different race. It was more of, what is the reality of this,
right,
and how is this going to affect? And yes, that is a racist thought. Unfortunately, they're thinking more about how people who are racist are going to react to them.
right.
But as a parent, it's very much something that your mind goes to when your child is, especially back then, when your child says, "Hey, I'm going to get married to someone of a different race," that was not something that was done as much.
Right.
And you as a parent want to protect your child. So it's such an amazing movie. It was nominated for Best Picture. Spencer Tracy was nominated. Katharine Hepburn, I think, won an Oscar for her role in it. And for that to also happen, that these movies with this racial diversity and this racial issue being brought up to be nominated and have win and everything, that showed a lot. That kind of showed where the progression was going.
Right.
But no,
well, and I think at that time, well over half the states, it was still illegal to have interracial marriages. So do you have that question also? If you go outside of one of the states, your marriage is not considered valid. So it is that
and if
issue.
you go to the wrong part of a state, you could get lynched.
Yeah, right. Even though it's here,
The thing is there are still huge issues in race relations in this country.
Right.
We have come a long way for the most part on certain things, but this really speaks to just that fear that people have about race relations.
Right.
And how that works. So, no, it's such a great movie. I knew it was going to be on your list because you've told me privately, how much you love Sydney and how much you think he's a great actor. And I would have been shocked. It's actually on my short list that's not going to make this, but I was like, no, Professor's got that one.
Exactly. Keith asked if this is what we're talking about. Yes, Keith, that was exactly which I know you figured out during our conversation here. I do just adore this movie. So
such a good movie.
It is. It's so well acted.
Sydney is, like, first of all, the fact that, I mean, he acts in this in a way that I don't think any other actor at the time could have done.
Right.
He brings such a grace and a charm, and yet, a passion to the role that is just stunning to watch. He is a very stunning actor to watch. His craft is amazing. He is so good at. There are those actors that you're like, I could listen to them read the telephone book. He is one of those.
Right.
But yeah, such an important movie for its time, and I understand the want to remake it. I just didn't think it was necessary to remake.
I agree. I did not see the remakes. I just didn't, because I'm like, what am I going to gain from this? So Keith said Katharine Hepburn did it again with A Lion and Winter, and that's correct. He also mentions another movie that not on either one of our lists, but It was a thought of mine because of this was a movie I loved watching when I was a kid, but I kind of grew past it by like age 10. It was Chitty Chitty Bang
Chitty
Bang,
Chitty
which
Bang Bang.
I love
It's
that.
on my list.
Yeah,
It just didn't make my
Didn't
short
make-
list.
Right, exactly. I will say while we were talking about Sidney Poitier, that I had another movie on my list. It was the very next one down, even, and so I was like, ugh. So I wanted to make sure I talked about it just briefly. To Sir with Love.
To Sir with Love. It's on my short list too.
Another amazing movie where he basically is waiting for a job and he goes and takes a teaching job of a class of rejects that won't listen to anybody, and he treats them like adults and tells them these are the rules of adulthood. This is how you have to address people. This is how you have to act. And how he basically went over this class of losers or rebels to actually know how to be an adult. And just and
here's the thing: I love movies where there are teachers that are inspiring, and I love the true story ones too. But yes, to watch him on screen is mesmerizing.
I agree.
So it is on my short list as well. So I put both those on my list that I knew wasn't going to go on there, but I thought both of them would be on your list. I'm not even going to lie.
Well, I couldn't figure out how to get it on any higher. I just was.
You're like,
I'm like, I almost earlier took off Night of the Living Dead to put it on there. So that's how close I was. And I'm like, I don't feel like I can do that at this moment. But but yeah, Keith, you mentioned, and he mentioned here MASH. MASH is actually from 1970, so that will be on the movie possibilities for the next one of these that we do, whenever that. Because for a while we were doing them very regularly, and then we had taken a pause away from that for a while. So I figure we'll be back to doing some more. But
it's really hard.
It is.
Like, it is very hard to come up with a list that is. Like, some of the ones that I pick sometimes I'm like, is it my favorite? No, but it has to be on the list.
Right.
It's like yours would be if you were telling the honest to God truth, To Sir with Love, if you were just like, these are my favorite movies from this time frame, To Sir with Love would have beat out Night of the Living Dead. I know it would.
It probably would, yeah.
But
I already had Guess Who's Coming to Dinner on there, and
you understand that there's like, so when we say these are our favorite movies, sometimes we pick movies that are like up there, but we don't want two that are very similar if we can fit another one in that's just as good or from a different genre. So yeah.
Well, in Night of the Living Dead, I really love. So I mean,
I love that
tough. One. So it's not like I don't love that movie. So it's it's one of those things to where sometimes you're picking straws and trying to figure out how to make these lists. These lists are difficult.
Like when we started this, like we started with silent films in the 1920s,
right?
And we've gone now. We're gonna our next thing is the 1970s. This is so hard.
It is.
We do 5-year things, 60s, or the 0s to 4, and then 5 to 9.
Right.
So 60 to 64, 65 to 69, but it's still so hard. And we are both such like 80s children. When we get to the 80s, we'll have to do year.
Yeah, there's no way to do every 5 years in the 80s.
No.
We're going to have to do 1 year at a time because of that. But yes. Most definitely.
So I have one more, and this is not my favorite from this time frame, but I love it so much.
It is a great movie.
It reminds me of my mom because my mom loved this movie so much. And that is The Planet of the Apes.
Damn dirty apes.
I know. Bright eyes. You can't. I can't imagine a world where this movie was not made.
Right.
And that's why it's at the top of my list. I can't imagine a world where this movie was not made. This is one that they've remade, kind of. They prequeled it, that sort of thing. And I don't have a problem with that. I don't. But just the makeup and the prosthetics and the costumes and all of that in this movie, so good for the time frame.
Yes.
And the story, like, you don't know where it's going. Like,
not at all.
The first time you watch it, now I watched it really young, so it might be, but the first time I watched it, I did not know where it was going. I didn't realize until, you see the statue, like, at the end, you like, oh, they went
not a different
time.
planet. It's time, right?
It's time. But it's just the concept of it is very much something that I think a lot of people think about, like, if an animal would take over and we are the dominant animal on the planet. I think people forget that humans are animals.
Right.
Like, I really do. Like, that, like, what's the most intelligent animal in the world? Like, people will say dolphins or chimps or whatever. Humans are never listed when I talk to people, but
then you look at our politicians, and then maybe we're
not all of us are stupid.
No, but we seem to vote for people that are.
Well,
anyway, that's beside the point. I'm pointing at everybody with that, not one party or the other.
No, Professor doesn't do party picks. He's like, no, he's straight down the line. Everyone sucks.
Pretty much.
Like I tell people all the time, I'm like, I love the human race. I just like people.
Right.
I love the idea of people. I think they're good people, and I love the idea of people, but I just like people. Like, when they get into groups, for some reason, I just like that.
The group mentality,
not that I just like people.
To affect people, right?
Yes, not that I just like people. One, I get very anxious around people, but two, I feel like when people get into that hive mindset, I can't deal with that. I have no use for that. I don't know how that works. I think like nobody else, and it's fine.
You know what?
No one is like me.
Nobody is supposed to think like we do, 100%.
Right.
And people that want to exclude me because I may differ with you on one little thing, I'm like, do you agree with most people? Because I don't agree with anybody 100%. There's people I agree with more than others.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I'm with you.
And what's great is this movie, the movie we were talking about, goes with that. Like, when do you start thinking for yourself and stop thinking with the collective?
Right.
Not Charleston Heston's character, but the apes.
Right.
Like, when do they start thinking for themselves and stop going with the collective? When do you speak up when you think something's wrong? When do you, like, all of these things? And that's just it's society, and it is such a great metaphor for the human race, and what we do to the earth and what we do to animals. Like, what would it be like if it was reversed? How would we feel? And would we want somebody to stand up for us? And it's just a great movie and such a sci-fi classic.
It definitely is. I was so glad it was on your list, because I'm like, it was on my longer list, and I'm like, how to fit this in here? And because I'm like, okay, my top 4 movies weren't going to move.
Right.
My top 4 were set. I'm like, I know these 4 aren't going anywhere, so I've got to figure out how to move other things in, and what do you add and what do you not add, because I knew this was the order they were in, and they were set there because these are the ones that I'm just passionate about. And I love these other movies also, but these are the ones I'm really passionate about.
Right.
So it was interesting because it was just it's so
It's
tough.
always like that.
It is.
This one wasn't that much for me, like I said, but the 60 through 64, so hard for me.
Right.
So hard for me. My favorite movie is from that time period, and that's To Kill a Mockingbird.
Right. Great movie.
Yeah, Gregory Peck, can't beat that.
I agree. I agree.
But you know, we like those movies that discuss social injustice and that discuss social issues that we're facing the times, because to be honest with you, we're still facing them.
Right.
As a society, we might not be facing them in the extremes all the time as they were, but there's still issues that these tackle, and they're still really good. I love movies made from books, and I love movies made from plays. And it's sad to me that, did you see like the local school talking about like banning books?
No.
Yeah.
Why do we want to go and ban books? I don't care.
One of the local school districts is having parents read these books to see if they're appropriate for high schoolers, and they're going to try to take the books out of the high school. And some of them are books that I literally told my children to read.
Right.
They're books. Here's the thing. If you're so scared for your child to read books about child abuse or social injustices or race issues or any of those things, then, you know, you need to have serious conversations with your children, because when they get older, if you haven't discussed these things with them, they're going to walk into the world not knowing. And some of my favorite books are ones that might not be, I mean, some of my favorite books are banned books, but To Kill a Mockingbird.
Right.
What? The Outsiders.
Yep.
Perks of Being a Wallflower.
Yep.
I don't know if you've read that. I mean, it's been made into a movie, but the book is beautiful. Go Ask Alice.
Yep.
A Separate Piece. There are so many books that I had on a list that my children were to read before they turned a certain age.
Right.
And
well, I don't understand the whole idea of banning books either. If you don't want your kids to read them, have that conversation. But maybe they should, if it's an issue that that you feel like you don't want them to have a tainted view on for whatever reason, let them read it and discuss it, because they're going to have these discussions in school on these issues. They're going to have discussions with people on these issues. And not everything I've read do I agree with, but sometimes I read a book and like, I get what you're saying. I don't agree with where you came from there, but at least you did it in a way that I'm like, okay, I can discuss that issue with you, or discuss it with somebody else or whatever. It's interesting, but I don't understand that. But,
right. That's the thing. It's a lot of these movies that we've picked from all of the decades that we've done so far. There are movies that were controversial at the time.
Right.
There are books that are controversial that I think every person should read, because I think that even if you disagree with it, it's great to see things from another point of view.
Boy, is that true. I agree.
And it's great to get the perspective of somebody who's not like you.
Right.
I'm not a teenage boy. I'm like, I've never been a teenage boy. I've never been a teenage boy who was poor in the 60s, like when The Outsiders was written, like when it's based on. I've never had gang warfare between rich people and poor people in my town. There's prejudice in every town, with the
Yes.
classes, the different classes, but not to that extreme. But there were parts of that book that were so important that resonated within me and within like my son when I had him read it. And, I feel like if you start banning books and start banning movies and stuff like that, it can hurt.
Right.
It can hurt that intellectual growth that you want them to have.
No, I think it is very fair to say my kid's not ready for this book.
Oh, yeah.
But banning it's a whole different thing. My kid not being ready for it doesn't mean your kid's not ready for it. It also doesn't mean they shouldn't read it or, with movies, watch it at some point.
Right.
But there may be a time frame. My 13-year-old may not be ready for something that they may be ready for when they're 16. Yeah. So, there's...
And each child's different.
Every child's different. You have to know your child. And sometimes as a parent, you're going to let them do something. Then you'll realize that probably wasn't the best decision at that point. And you move on. You're like, oh, right. Well, you weren't quite ready for that. I thought you were. Let's move on. We'll figure out that and do that later. Yep. So to me, that makes a lot more sense. Getting those books and then having a discussion with your kid, I don't think you're ready to read this one yet.
Right.
That's a whole different thing than we're going to generally ban a book from our library. That doesn't make sense at all. In fact, if you don't ban it, what are the odds your kid's going to want to go read it? If they find out it's about this issue.
I'm like, that's the thing is
I don't think I would have wanted to read The Color Purple in high school. I'm glad it's there. I've read it since, but man, that's an intense book. I probably would have gotten.
I read it, I think in 8th grade.
Yeah, of course you did. You're a much stronger reader than I am, and you're very much into reading where I was like, my dyslexia, I don't really care to read that. So I was reading sci-fi and fantasy books pretty exclusively at that point.
I was reading like The Color Purple, Dr. Zhivago.
Yeah. I know. You're much better read than I am.
I'm a weirdo. It's okay.
No, that's not it at all.
No, I am a weirdo. There's nothing wrong about me.
Keith had some comments, and then Jason had some comments also. So let's get to those real quick. I'm going to hit Keith because it's about Planet of the Apes. That's why people watch. They want to hear us talk. So, Planet of the Apes, classic film, worst adaptions. I didn't realize it was based off a book, Keith. So, so I can see that. And there's, what was I watching the other day that was based off a book? And I'm like, man, it's not even close to the book. What are you talking about?
Yeah, no, there's a lot of those. Well, the books are great. The book is great. Like the classic book, Planet of Apes, great. Here's the thing with it. Yes, do I think that if they would have used like Rod Serling, it could have been like better? Yes. But I still think that if you look at it I still think it holds up. I still do. So.
Well, he went on to say the script of the book, the film was a cheaper production because it seemed too expensive. Well, and it wasn't a cheap movie to make, but yes. And then goes on. I'm not sure about On Her Majesty's Secret Service. Maybe that's just one of Keith's favorites. Now, there's a Bond movie there. See, I didn't pick the Bond movies at all this time. Last time I picked Bond movies, and that's basically because my favorite Bond movies were like the first 3. So, so then, and Keith had trivia. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah. Didn't have the merchandising. It's all about the merchandising.
And we've talked about that so much.
So I now come back to those. Keith Mandy's got some comments there also. So let's hit Jason's because Jason had a long one here. All right. Only one of the 5 made the list.
Okay.
2001. 2 of my favorite are from the time period directed by the same man who's considered one of the best ever in his genre. Well,
I don't know enough about Jason's taste in movies. I know enough about his taste in music, but not his taste in movies.
right.
Um,
I'm wondering,
is it
Jason, is it Mel Brooks? Because I know Mel Brooks' very first movie, The Producers, was also on my short list. And I'm trying to remember what other movie he had a lot in the 70s and 80s. I'm trying to remember what else was in the 60s. But that would have been my guess, would have been Mel Brooks. Oh, look here. I think he answers it. Okay. What's it? Okay, that makes sense. And I
see,
actually
I don't do westerns.
I did look at Good, Bad, and the Ugly because it's a really good one. Once Upon a Time in the West is a good movie. Also, they're not my favorite ones, but yeah, Rosemary's Baby and True Grit. So he had three westerns. So that's
I love Rosemary's Baby.
That's a
I do.
weird freaking movie. Yeah.
It's on my short. It's on my long list.
I was actually surprised that one didn't make your list more higher up. So.
I'm seriously. So I was going to put it on there, and then I'm like, but I really like showcasing movies that not everybody knows about.
Right.
And so I felt like some of my other picks were like that. I don't do westerns. My dad was really into westerns. I have seen all of those westerns. True Grit. I've seen my dad. I've watched every John Wayne movie ever made.
Yeah. Right.
Multiple times.
Mine too. Yeah.
So I don't do westerns for that reason. They're never going to make my list. You're never going to see a western on my list.
The Good, the Bad, the Ugly was close to making my list. Just
it's
because
a good movie.
It's a very iconic movie. The music, we talked about it actually last week with that. By the way, just for people that are watching still, thank you for still watching. We're getting close to 2 hours. Next week we do have Morgan on with us. Morgan's going to come on and talk about the new her
Kickstarter.
Kickstarter that's going live next Tuesday. So be here, have questions for Morgan, and come and check us out next week. And we're not quite done with all this yet, but I meant to call that out earlier. But yeah, Morgan's going to be with us. Make sure to join us next week, guys, for Morgan. You guys will appreciate Morgan.
We love
so awesome.
Morgan.
We do love Morgan.
Morgan's awesome.
I agree. Let's see. What else was said
I'm getting text from Mr. Keith.
Oh, hey, Mr. Keith. We love Mr. Keith, by the way.
I know. I'm not even reading him, Keith. I'm sorry. I'll read them later. But my phone goes off and it's like, yeah.
Yeah, I can't see it that way. So, books to read. I actually didn't have a list of books for my kids to read, partially because I don't want to push what I like onto them. And I want them to read what they enjoy. I want them to have the joy of reading. My son, unfortunately, is kind of taken after me with his ADD and everything else. He's just not a strong reader. I would like for him to be better at that. I at least have comic books that I was always into and reading. He doesn't really have that. Most of the stuff he likes is nonfiction and stuff about how to do video game stuff and anything with that. And then Keith went on to say the Bond books. And I have never read any of the Bond books. I know.
Think you would enjoy them. Professor, I think you would enjoy them.
I'm sure I would. I've got books sitting on my shelf I haven't read for a long time. And I will go sporadically and read books, but I just haven't read anything. I haven't read any of the ones on my shelf in a long time.
Do you? No, exactly.
I agree. It's just problematic that people will. I mean, those books aren't going to get out. What you're going to do is you're going to highlight that. And guess what? It's not in your school library, but it's in your local library. Or you can go download the audio version of it. Or you can do, that book is not going away. You can ebook it. That book's not going away. You removing it from a library is not going to remove it. Now
here's the thing.
I think you should have issues of Playboy and everything else in your school library? No.
So I think that there's things that are age sensitive.
Right. Yes.
And I think you should, like, elementary schools shouldn't have certain books.
That's not banning, though. Right. That's looking at the age.
Right.
There. Right.
But there are certain children. My son read The Hobbit in kindergarten.
Right.
he read Lord of the Flies in first grade. He was fine with those books because he was a very avid reader.
Right.
But do I think that? But I got those books for him. I don't think they should have been in the library, in the kindergarten library, in the first grade library.
Right.
Do I think like Go Ask Alice should be in the elementary school library? No, it shouldn't. It should not be in the elementary school library. But do I think that it's okay for the high school level? I think since it involves a high school girl, that's the thing. That's the thing with it. There are books that are written about or by children who had things done to them. There are books written by I can't think of the name of the book, but it was written by a 12-year-old about child abuse, and he wrote it when he was 12 about what he went through. Do I think that you should ban that from high schoolers? Probably not.
Right. I agree.
Do I think that parents should be made aware if their students are checking out like books that have like some kind of issue like that might be maybe have a rating system in your school, and parents have to sign a thing that says my kid can check out like these, older books or whatever. But to ban them completely is just wrong.
Well, in being a kid who was not a strong reader, I'm not looking for those anyway. If you don't want me to read it, don't point it out. If you're starting to make a big deal out of it, I am much more curious and I'm more likely to find it. Yeah. Telling me not to do something almost always results in me wanting to do it. And I think most kids are like that too. I think once you start saying this book is banned, I'm like, I'm going to go find out why it's banned. Let's go read it.
Yeah.
So now you have just led me to want to do that.
Yep.
So I think that's the problem. And as Mandy says, it usually backfires on people. I'm not totally sure, Keith, what this list is, other than all amazing books. Other than, well, I didn't find Dracula amazing. I'll be honest. The first half of it I was into, and then it started dragging, and I didn't love how they killed him at the end. And I was like, really? That was it?
But those are all books those are all books that have been banned.
Okay. Well, that I didn't. Why in the world would you ban The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings? I don't know.
The Hobbit, the Harry Potter books were banned.
I know, idiots. And some of them were people I was good friends with that wanted to ban. I'm like, go read it before you ban it.
Right.
I know.
Here's the thing. I had friends who were like totally against the Harry Potter books, like totally against it. And I was letting Dakota read them. We read them together even, and we enjoyed them.
Yeah.
Now these people are the biggest Harry Potter fans ever. Like, they love Harry Potter. I finally got them to read the book. And I was like, they were like, well, it's got magic and it's all this, but they're Disney fanatics. And I'm like, you cannot be a Disney fanatic and be against magic.
Right.
Cinderella had a freaking fairy godmother. Bibbidi bobbidi boo.
Right.
What is that? Magic. It's magic.
Right.
They're like, well, that's different. And I'm like, it's fictional magic. It's the same thing. But I got them to read it. So it's the thing. And I'm not saying if it is against your faith to read it, and if it's against your sensibilities to read it, and you don't want to read it, you don't want your children to read it, you have every right to say that and do that. But to say that no child should read it and nobody should read it, that's where I have the problem.
No, I'm with you 100% on that. And that's where you have those conversations and say, this is why we don't read this. And this is why this. So
it's the same thing like you mentioned, like Playboy. Like you don't go and say, oh, like Playboy, like I can't read Playboy, but whatever.
It's all for the articles, AJ. It's all for the articles.
True. Yeah, I've heard that before. But
it's not all for the articles.
None of it's for the articles. What are you talking about?
Speaking from a guy who found his father's Playboys at a pretty young age.
That's what I was getting at.
It's not for the articles at all.
That's what I was getting at. These people who will read Playboy, or the dads read Playboy, but they won't let their child read Lord of the Flies.
Right. I don't know.
Really?
I don't get it. I don't get it at all. So
I don't get
yeah,
it. But
I don't understand that. But again, if you need your kid not to read something, but again, if your kid
teach
hits a
them.
certain age, they're going to have to know how to respond to this. They're going to be expected to know a little bit about it. They can't have a real conversation about it if you're not allowed to read it. So,
Right.
and they're going to read it whenever you're not around. It's just what's going to happen. Mandy says The Help, which there you
The
go.
Help. Yep.
Yep. And Jason says all the Fleming books are better than any Bond movie. I understand that. I've not read them. I can't go for that judgment, but the first 3 Bond movies are pretty amazing in my opinion. So I'm just going to leave that there.
Those are fun words, Jason. Those are fun words.
I know that the Sean Connery's characters in it is nothing like what the character is in the book. I realize that.
But Professor still loves them. I'm just saying.
I own every Bond movie ever made. Except I don't own the one that was the spoofy one that was like from the 50s. So I don't own that one. But I own all the other ones. So Keith, yes, Keith, I did see that. I did ban them more than once. So they've been banned. So hopefully, I apologize to anybody that read their comments. We've got that.
What were their comments?
Oh my gosh, about watch here for girls live. And
yeah, I hate those things.
I'm like, that's not what we're about here. I mean, whatever I'm sure people will go watch that. Great, good for you. That's just not what we're doing. So, Mandy, I know, I know. Thank you, Mandy, and I've been banning them, so I don't know what's going on with those. All right. Oh, we got some more new comments apparently down below. I thought we were done, but we weren't done yet. My goodness, guys. And I love the comments, by the way. So I'm not saying my goodness because of that. I'm just trying to make sure we get to everything.
He's like scrolling through.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Lord of the Rings was written for kids 9 to 14. And The Hobbit was written for that age group too. And people don't realize that. But it's considered a high school level book. My son read it in kindergarten and they had the AR testing. And the AR testing said it was a 9th grade book.
Oh, wow. See, The Hobbit was much easier reading than, especially Fellowship of the Ring. Fellowship of the Ring, when you start talking about the trees before we get to Tom, oh my gosh, Tolkien. I stopped and started that book so many times because of the tree description. So you're killing me. Even though I love Tolkien, that I'm like, I don't know how any 9-year-old could read this things about the trees and continue. But that's just me. Because I got stuck there. Okay. Now, Dune, I have a problem with Dune. And so it's not that it was bad or anything else. The version of the book that I got had no chapters. And I have to know how many pages are left in the chapter so I can focus on do it. And I'm flipping and there's no chapters. And I tried to read it. And I wanted to really love it. And so I never finished Dune because of that. I'm hoping there's a version out there with chapters, or I can get it auto. That would probably be good, an auditory book for me on that one. All right. Fear and Loathing. Oh, really? That's interesting. Threatened to be suspended because of that book. I mean, it's not like you're bringing in a porn book there. I just don't understand that.
Professor, I'm going to have to go.
All right. Very good, AJ. Have a great night. We're wrapping up here anyway, so we will talk to you later. All right. And Bond movies are out of order. I understand that. I still love my Bond movies. I know they're out of order. And honestly, I even love the Roger Moore movies. I'll be honest. I love my Roger Moore. So they're so funny. I just enjoy them. As a kid, I loved those the most. I don't know, a little C-3PO. That's not too annoying also. All right, guys, that is all for our show today. I know AJ had to go. I will go ahead and sign us off. Want to thank everybody for watching. You guys have been a great audience. I love your messages. Jason, Keith, Mandy, everybody else that watched. We had several people watching tonight. Thank you so much for watching. Please tell your friends about it. Next week, we've got Morgan. You guys are going to want to hang out for Morgan, ask her lots of questions. And AJ and I will be here with Morgan next week. So excited. And you'll want to check out our Kickstarter. And I know you want to go right after the show, go over and sign up for our Kickstarter. So just be prepared for that. That's what you're going to want to do. All right. One last one from Keith, and then I'm going to end the comments, and then we'll do our little wrap-up. Your son, a publisher, rings and wrote a report for his father, recommending the book. That's awesome. I'm glad he was able to get through the trees. That even when I was in high school, I had a hard time getting through the trees. So, but, dyslexic with ADD, that's not helpful for me. So, but I do love Tolkien. And then after the trees, that book gets really cool. And then the next two, I just flew through. So, but Fellowship of the Ring, oh my gosh. That as soon as you leave the Shire, I'm bogged down. I thought that I was in the bogs. All right. So we do have Keith on with Keith giving us comments, and we love you, Keith. And don't forget about Keith and Gary Show Pop Culture Minefield on YouTube. It's going on. I know he was filming tonight, and those guys are awesome. They are not always PG in the language, so you do have to have viewer discretion. And as we say, don't ban people from watching it. Just know if it's the right thing for you and your kids. Keith also has Keith Chimes In on Mondays at 3 p.m. on YouTube on the Fat Steven Seagal Show. And that's just the greatest name for a show right there, Fat Steven Seagal Show. I love it. I know Keith's still talking about Babylon 5, going through every episode, and that's just amazing. Babylon 5 is such a great series, and Keith knows a ton about it, well beyond what I do. So, Keith, that's fantastic. Keep that up, my friend. We also have, of course, our friends at the Nerd Informants. We talked a little bit about Tim earlier, and we've got Josh. Those guys are amazing, talking about movies and everything else. You guys need to check them out if you don't know. They've got stuff all over. You want to subscribe to them. And, of course, we've got the Nerd Informants Beyond, which is their open site on Facebook page to be able to let you go in, post things, and read things that other people are posting. And it's not just their comments, it's everybody's comments, which is fantastic. We've got our friends over at the Fanatics and the Fan. Check them out over on YouTube. They're going live really often, and check out what's going on with those guys. And, of course, we do have our good friend, the Scallywag himself, who Spoo is getting better, and we're so happy that he's doing a lot better. Today's his birthday, by the way. Happy birthday, Spoo, if you watch this later. I hope you had a wonderful day. I know I stole your future wife from you for a couple hours, and sorry about that. I didn't mean to do that on your birthday. But, and of course, AJ and Spoo are getting married, as we mentioned at OzCon in April. That you guys will want to check out also. But Spoo's, all this stuff over on YouTube with Scallywag Productions. The videos are great. He also has every sort of social media, including Instagram. He's got a picture of one of his figures of the day. That's really cool. And you guys are awesome. We have so many great friends, so many great things that are going on. Keith, thank you. I said I was going to read more comments. I went ahead and read it. Appreciate it, my friend. Hope you had a great show, too. I'll be checking that out later. And I just want to end by saying, for me and AJ, we thank you so much for watching. We hope that maybe you saw one of these movies that you had not seen before, and that it'll make you want to check it out. Or, maybe your list is a little different, and we're happy to hear your list. I know that we had a few people mention that they had different lists. We're always happy to see those. Happy to have those in our comments. And, and feel free, if you would like, guys, to write me up an article and get it to me, and I can get that posted over on GeekyKOOL with your list of those movies. So until next week, when we've got Morgan on, I just want to say, stay geeky, guys. We'll talk to you later.